Will Smith had just arrived in a bustling city, eager for a break after wrapping up a demanding film shoot. He chose a quaint, luxurious hotel nestled in a quieter part of town, hoping to find some peace away from the flashing cameras and endless fanfare that usually followed him. The hotel, known for its discretion and exemplary service, seemed like the perfect hideaway for someone of his stature who yearned for anonymity and a brief escape from his celebrity life. As he stepped out of the cab, the cool evening breeze greeted him, carrying with it the distant sounds of the city, honking cars, chattering pedestrians, and the occasional siren in the far-off distance. He walked into the hotel's grand lobby, its floors shining under the warm glow of chandeliers, and the air filled with a soft, melodious tune playing from hidden speakers. The staff welcomed him with subtle nods and smiles, careful not to draw attention, respecting his need for privacy. Checking in was a breeze. The front desk attendant, a young woman with a polite smile, handed him his key card, assuring him that his stay would be as comfortable and discreet as possible. Will nodded, appreciating the low-key approach, and made his way to his suite. The corridors were adorned with tasteful artwork, and plush carpets muffled his footsteps, enhancing the quiet atmosphere he so desperately sought. His suite was a blend of elegance and comfort, decorated in soothing earth tones with expansive windows that offered a panoramic view of the city's skyline, now lit by thousands of lights as night deepened. He unpacked his belongings, his mind still buzzing from the film's final scenes, replaying lines and moments as he settled in. Despite the excitement of his recent success, exhaustion was setting in, and he was grateful for the softness of the king-sized bed that beckoned him. Deciding to make the most of his first night, Will ordered room service, a simple meal, nothing too fancy, and while waiting, he wandered over to the windows. He watched the city, feeling detached yet part of it all from his quiet, high-rise refuge. When his meal arrived, he ate with an appetite fueled by the day's exertions, savoring the flavors of a well-cooked steak and freshly baked bread. As the meal ended, he felt the weight of fatigue pulling at his eyelids. He glanced at the bed again, now more inviting than ever. Giving in to his tiredness, he decided to call it an early night. The city would still be there tomorrow, but tonight, all he wanted was to succumb to the quiet whispers of sleep in his peaceful, temporary haven. The lights of the room dimmed, and as he slipped under the crisp, clean sheets, the sounds of the world outside faded into a distant hum, lulling him into a deep, much-needed sleep. Will woke up to a serene morning, the sun casting its golden light through the large windows of his suite. He stretched leisurely, feeling refreshed and energized after a long, undisturbed sleep. The city that had seemed so lively the night before now appeared peaceful and inviting in the morning light. Will decided to start his day with a hearty breakfast. He picked up the phone and ordered a selection of his favorites: pancakes, fresh fruits, scrambled eggs, and a strong coffee to kickstart the day. While waiting for his breakfast, Will paced around the room, his thoughts wandering back to his latest film. He reflected on the scenes he had shot, considering how his performance would be received by the audience and critics. Despite his years in the industry, every new project brought a mix of excitement and nerves. Acting was not just a job for him. It was a passion that drove him to constantly improve and evolve. The knock on the door signaled the arrival of his breakfast. He welcomed the tray laden with delicious, steaming food, thanking the staff member with a friendly nod. Setting the tray on the table, he sat down to eat, enjoying the quiet moment to himself, savoring each bite as he looked out over the city waking up. The simplicity of the morning, free from any obligations, allowed him to take a moment to truly relax. After breakfast, Will decided to explore some local sites. He dressed casually, hoping to blend in with the crowds and experience the city as any other tourist might. He visited a renowned museum, strolled through a historic park, and browsed through a few local shops, picking up souvenirs for his family. The anonymity he found in the bustling city was a refreshing change from his usual public life. People passed by without a second glance, and Will enjoyed the normalcy that came with being just another face in the crowd. As afternoon turned to evening, he returned to the hotel, his feet tired, but his spirit lifted by the day's adventures. He had a light dinner in the hotel's restaurant, choosing the secluded table where he continued to enjoy the feeling of being unrecognizable. The food was exquisite, and the ambience of the restaurant, soft music, gentle lighting, and the murmur of other diners, was soothing. After dinner, Will headed back to his room, his mind still buzzing with the sights and sounds of the city. He felt grateful for the chance to step away from his celebrity status and just be himself, if only for a little while. As he prepared for bed, he felt a deep sense of peace. The day had been perfect, exactly what he needed to recharge. He climbed into bed, looking forward to another day of exploration tomorrow, and slowly drifted off to sleep, the comforting silence of the hotel embracing him once again. In the deep silence of the night, a sudden noise startled Will from his sleep. Half awake, he lay in bed, listening intently. At first, he thought it might be the usual sounds of a hotel at night, the distant clink of an elevator, the muffled footsteps of late-night guests. But then he heard it again, a soft but distinct whisper coming from the room next door. The walls, usually a barrier to the outside world, now seemed to carry every sound directly to him. Curiosity piqued, Will rose from his bed and tiptoed across the room, his movements quiet in the plush carpeting. He pressed his ear against the wall, straining to catch the words being spoken. At first, the voices were too low, their words tangled together in a hushed, urgent whisper. But as he focused, the conversation began to come through more clearly. There were two voices, a man and a woman. They spoke of documents and secret meetings, their tones laced with anxiety and caution. Will's heart raced as he realized that this was no ordinary chat. Something important, perhaps even dangerous, was being discussed. They mentioned a plan to expose corporate secrets, to disrupt a major tech company's upcoming deal. It was clear they were on the brink of something big, something that could have significant consequences. Will pulled away from the wall, his mind racing. He was an outsider accidentally caught up in a conspiracy he knew nothing about. The weight of the situation pressed upon him. What should he do? Should he ignore the conversation and try to sleep, pretending he had heard nothing? Or was there a moral obligation to act, to somehow stop these people from potentially harming others? The decision weighed heavily on him. He paced the room, the gravity of the situation making it impossible to think about sleep. Finally, with a deep breath, he picked up the phone and dialed the hotel security. He kept his voice low, explaining that he had overheard a disturbing conversation through the wall. He didn't provide his name, hoping to maintain his privacy, but he gave enough details to make it clear that the matter was serious. The security officer on the other end of the line assured him they would handle the situation discreetly and thanked him for the information. Will hung up, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Had he done the right thing? Would the hotel actually investigate, or had he just exposed himself to potential danger? Unable to sleep, Will sat by the window, watching the night turn into dawn. He felt isolated, caught between his desire for a peaceful retreat and the unexpected role he had found himself playing. As the first light of morning painted the sky, he realized that the day ahead might hold answers to the questions swirling in his mind, or it might bring even more questions. Either way, he knew he couldn't just walk away now, not until he knew the outcome of the night's unforeseen events. As dawn broke over the city, the soft hues of morning light seeped into Will's room, casting a calm glow across the space. Despite the soothing atmosphere, his mind was anything but peaceful. He had made a call to hotel security last night about the unsettling conversation he overheard, and now he was anxious about the follow-up. Would the hotel staff take his concerns seriously, or would his complaint be dismissed as the paranoid worries of a tired traveler? After a restless wait, there was a soft knock at his door. Will steeled himself before answering, unsure of what to expect. Standing at the doorway was the hotel's security manager, a professional-looking man in a crisp uniform, who introduced himself as Mr. Jenkins. He asked if he could come in to discuss the report Will had made. Relieved but still nervous, Will let him inside, appreciating the discreet manner in which Mr. Jenkins handled the situation. Mr. Jenkins sat down and assured Will that his report was being taken very seriously. He explained that the hotel valued the safety and privacy of its guests above all else, and that an investigation was already underway. They had identified the guests in the adjacent room and were currently reviewing their stay and activities within the hotel. Mr. Jenkins asked Will if he could remember any specific details about the conversation, particularly anything that could help them verify the severity of the situation. Will recounted the bits he remembered, trying to recall the exact words without adding any unnecessary embellishments. He described the tone of urgency in the voices, the mentions of a tech company, and the plan that seemed both intricate and illicit. Mr. Jenkins listened intently, taking notes and nodding appreciatively at Will's detailed account. After discussing the conversation, Mr. Jenkins informed Will that the hotel would handle the matter discreetly and efficiently. He assured Will that his identity would be kept confidential and that he wouldn't be involved any further unless absolutely necessary. Before leaving, he thanked Will for his vigilance and promised that the hotel would update him if and when the situation was resolved. Once Mr. Jenkins left, Will felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done his part, and now it was up to the hotel to manage the situation. Trying to put the night's events behind him, he decided to take advantage of his remaining time in the city. He planned a day out, hoping to distract himself and enjoy some leisure activities that would take his mind off the drama. Will spent the day visiting a famous art gallery, enjoying a relaxing lunch at a nearby cafe, and then walking through a bustling local market. Each activity helped to restore a bit of the peace and normalcy he sought from his getaway. As he mingled with the city's residents and other tourists, the worries of the previous night began to fade, tucked away as just another strange story in his life's tapestry. Returning to the hotel that evening, Will felt more at ease. The professional handling of his report by Mr. Jenkins and the security team had reassured him, and he was ready to enjoy his last night in the haven he had chosen, hopeful that the issue was being resolved without further disruption. As night fell, he settled in, a book in hand, finally able to relax completely, the earlier unrest now just a whisper in the back of his mind. As Will settled into his final evening at the hotel, his thoughts occasionally drifted back to the alarming conversation he had overheard. However, the reassurances from Mr. Jenkins allowed him to focus more on the pages of his book rather than the worries of the previous night. The hotel room felt secure, a cocoon shielding him from the outside world's chaos. After a couple of hours of reading, Will's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Mr. Jenkins, updating him on the situation. The email was brief but informative, explaining that the individuals involved in the suspicious conversation had been discreetly questioned, and it was determined that their discussion, while serious, was not criminal but rather a corporate strategy meeting that had sounded more ominous than it was intended. Mr. Jenkins thanked Will for his vigilance and assured him that the matter was resolved and no further action was needed. Relieved by the clarification and grateful for the thoroughness of the hotel's response, Will felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He could now enjoy his remaining time without any underlying tension. Deciding to make the most of his last night, he closed his book and ventured down to the hotel bar, a stylish area known for its excellent cocktails and relaxing atmosphere. At the bar, Will found a quiet spot and ordered a drink. As he sipped his cocktail, he struck up a conversation with the bartender, a friendly young man who shared interesting anecdotes about the city and its history. The casual chat was engaging and made Will feel even more connected to the vibrant life around him. The bar gradually filled with other guests, and the low hum of conversations mixed with the soft music created a pleasant backdrop. Will enjoyed observing the diverse crowd, a mixture of business travelers, couples, and solo adventurers like himself, each with their own stories and reasons for visiting the city. Feeling sociable and uplifted, Will ended up joining a group of fellow travelers at a larger table. They shared travel stories, laughed over shared experiences, and exchanged tips about must-see places in the city. The conversation was light and joyful, a perfect way for Will to wrap up his visit. As the night progressed, Will excused himself from the group and returned to his room. Feeling content with how the day had turned out, he packed his belongings, preparing for his departure the next morning, his mind at ease. The drama of the overheard conversation seemed like a distant memory now, overshadowed by the new, pleasant memories he had made since. Before going to bed, Will stood at the window, looking out at the city lights. He felt a deep appreciation for the unexpected journey the trip had become, from the unsettling eavesdropping to the peaceful resolution and the enjoyable interactions afterward. It was a reminder of the unpredictable nature of travel and life itself, where discomfort can sometimes lead to delightful outcomes. With a final look at the city skyline, Will turned off the lights and slipped into bed, ready for a good night's sleep before traveling home the next day, carrying with him stories and experiences from a place he would remember not just for its initial unease, but for its eventual warmth and welcome. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, casting warm golden light across Will's hotel room. He blinked awake, stretching lazily, feeling more rested than he had in days. Today was his last day in the city, and despite the unexpected events of his stay, he felt a sense of fulfillment. The peaceful resolution of the situation from the previous night had allowed him to fully relax, and now he was ready to head home with fresh memories. He got out of bed and walked over to the window, admiring the view one last time. The city looked different in the early morning light, quieter, calmer, and almost welcoming. He took a deep breath, letting the moment settle in before turning away to get ready. After a quick shower, he packed his remaining belongings, making sure not to leave anything behind. A soft knock at the door startled him. Curious, he walked over and opened it. Standing there was a hotel staff member holding a small envelope. "Good morning, Mr. Smith. This is from Mr. Jenkins," the staff member said with a polite nod, handing him the envelope before leaving. Will opened it immediately. Inside was a simple handwritten note from the security manager. It read, "Mr. Smith, thank you for your vigilance and for trusting us with your concerns. Your discretion and quick thinking are qualities we appreciate in our guests. We hope your stay was still enjoyable, and we look forward to welcoming you again. Safe travels. M. Jenkins *." A small smile tugged at Will's lips. It was a nice touch, a sign that the hotel truly cared about its guests. Folding the note, he tucked it into his jacket pocket before finishing his packing. With his suitcase in hand, he made his way downstairs to the lobby. The air smelled of fresh coffee and baked goods from the hotel's breakfast lounge, making his stomach rumble. Deciding he had time for one last meal before leaving, he headed to the dining area. The breakfast buffet was well stocked, and he filled his plate with a mix of fruits, eggs, and a buttery croissant. He found a quiet corner to sit, enjoying the comforting atmosphere as he sipped on a freshly brewed coffee. Around him, other guests were engaged in their morning routines, some deep in conversation, others scrolling through their phones, and a few simply enjoying their meals in silence, much like he was. As he sat there, he reflected on the trip. It had been nothing like he expected. What was supposed to be a quiet getaway had turned into a brief but thrilling adventure. Yet in the end, everything had worked out. He had met interesting people, enjoyed beautiful sights, and even played a small part in ensuring that everything in the hotel remained secure. Finishing his coffee, he glanced at his watch. It was time to go. He took one last look around, absorbing the warm and familiar atmosphere before making his way to the front desk to check out. As he handed over his key card, he felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the hospitality, but for the unexpected journey the trip had turned into. With his suitcase rolling behind him, he stepped outside, ready to leave the city behind, yet carrying with him an experience he would never forget. Will stepped out of the hotel, taking in the fresh morning air as he waited for his car to arrive. The city was already alive, with people rushing to work, taxis honking, and street vendors setting up their stalls. The sounds and sights felt familiar now, almost comforting. He had come here seeking peace and rest, but instead he had stumbled into an unexpected adventure, one that had kept him on edge, yet had also reminded him of the unpredictable nature of life. As his car pulled up, the driver, an older gentleman with a kind smile, greeted him warmly and helped load his suitcase into the trunk. Will slid into the back seat, leaning against the window as the cityscape blurred past. The roads were busy, yet the ride to the airport felt strangely calming. He found himself reflecting on the past few days, how he had gone from enjoying a quiet night to overhearing a conversation that had changed the course of his stay. He thought about the hotel staff, especially Mr. Jenkins, who had handled the situation so smoothly. The way the hotel had respected his privacy while addressing the issue had left a lasting impression on him. Despite the initial unease, he felt grateful that he had chosen that particular hotel, where professionalism and care had made all the difference. At a traffic light, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. He hesitated before opening it. "Mr. Smith, I just wanted to personally thank you again. Sometimes the smallest actions prevent bigger problems. Wishing you a safe journey. Regards, M. Jenkins." Will smiled. It was rare for security personnel to follow up in such a thoughtful way, and it reassured him that he had done the right thing. He replied with a simple, "Appreciate it. Thanks for everything." Then he put his phone away and let himself relax for the rest of the drive. When he arrived at the airport, he checked in and made his way through security without any hassle. He had been through airports countless times, yet today, everything felt different. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a while, he wasn't just leaving with souvenirs. He was taking a story with him. Something real, something unique. Finding his departure gate, he sat down in a quiet corner and watched travelers move around him. Business people rushed past with briefcases, families gathered near their gates, and solo travelers like him found seats where they could wait in peace. He took out his book, but instead of reading, he stared at the pages, lost in thought. His name was suddenly announced for boarding. He grabbed his bag, took one last deep breath, and walked toward the gate. As he handed over his ticket, he glanced back at the terminal, the city beyond it, and smiled. This wasn't just another trip. It was an experience he would carry with him for a long time. With that, he stepped onto the plane, ready for the journey home. As Will settled into his seat on the plane, he let out a deep breath, finally allowing himself to fully relax. The past few days had been nothing like he had expected. What was meant to be a simple getaway had turned into an unexpected adventure, filled with mystery, tension, and a surprising sense of responsibility. Now, as the plane prepared for takeoff, he felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, curiosity, and even a bit of excitement at the thought of sharing this story with a few trusted friends. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, ensuring everyone was buckled in. Will leaned back against the soft headrest, closing his eyes for a moment as the hum of the engines grew louder. The plane began to taxi down the runway, and soon, the familiar force of acceleration pressed him into his seat. He watched through the window as the city he had grown accustomed to shrank beneath him, its streets and buildings becoming tiny dots against the landscape. Once they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turned off, and passengers began settling in for the long flight. Will pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. A few notifications popped up. Messages from friends, emails from his team, and one final message from Mr. Jenkins at the hotel. "Glad to hear you made it safely to the airport. If you ever return, know that you'll always be welcomed here. Safe travels." Will smiled and replied with a short but heartfelt, "Thanks for everything. Take care." Then he put his phone away and leaned back, reflecting on everything that had happened. As he sat there, he thought about the conversation he had overheard that first night. How something so small, just a few whispered words through the wall, had led to an entire chain of events. He had no way of knowing what might have happened if he hadn't spoken up, but he was glad he did. It reminded him of an important truth. Sometimes, the smallest choices can have a big impact. A flight attendant passed by and asked if he'd like anything to drink. He asked for a cup of coffee, deciding he wanted to stay awake and enjoy the peaceful journey. When the hot cup arrived, he wrapped his hands around it, savoring the warmth. The steady hum of the plane, the soft murmurs of other passengers, and the quiet comfort of being in the sky made him feel at peace. Looking around, he saw people lost in their own worlds, some reading, others watching movies, a few fast asleep. He wondered how many of them had their own unexpected stories from their travels. That was the beauty of life, he thought. Adventure often found you when you least expected it. As the plane continued its journey, Will gazed out at the endless sky, feeling grateful for the experience. He had come on this trip to escape, but instead, he had gained a memory he would never forget. With a content sigh, he took a sip of his coffee, closed his eyes, and let himself enjoy the quiet moment, knowing that when he landed, he would have one incredible story to tell.